Hello, everyone. My name is Jeannie Doherty, and my clients call me a money whisperer. And today we are at the Money Whispers podcast for couples. And I'm very excited because today we're going to be talking about business partnerships. And I have Jessica Van Antoine, who's here today, who is going to be my guest. And we're going to talk more in depth about what gets missing or what's get lost, if you will, when you are a business owner, because a lot of times how we build business and keep business and grow our business is through business relationships. And sometimes they're not always perfect. So I'm very excited about today's guest. So Jessica, can you tell me, when was the last time you created a business partnership?
2017.
Wow.
Years ago. Yeah.
So it was like an official partnership. It wasn't just like, oh, I agreed to do this or I agreed to do that kind of thing.
It was official. Yes.
It was official. Yes. I love this. Okay. So you don't have to spell out exactly all the details of the business partnership, but I'm just curious. Was this somebody that you had met before, or was it like we met in coffee chat, and it was just like, boom, perfect?
No, this was a real life friend. I actually, we met through some roommates that I was living with at the time. And she and I kind of had one of those moments. We were all having like a dinner party. She made a joke about something that kind of no one else got except for me.
Oh.
And from that moment on, we were like instant best friends. And I ended up moving out of that other house and moving in with her. So we were best friends. We were roommates. And then this business opportunity was like kind of coming up at the same time. And I was just going to go for it by myself. She's the one who actually said, do you want a business partner? And after giving it some thought, I decided to go for it. I was like, how cool to own a business with your best friend, right?
Right. Yeah, that is so cool, because not everyone can do that. Not everyone thinks, that far ahead. And like you said, well, I gave it some thought. It wasn't just like, let's just jump into the river and start swimming. We'll figure it out. And it's like, yeah, you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of business was this? Because that's the other thing, people always get kind of lost in translation. Oh, was it tech?
No. Yeah. So this was a wellness retreat business. So I had been, it was actually like a niche sort of training, a Thai massage training travel program business. And I had been a shiatsu instructor for coming up on a decade at that point in my life. She had a background in Thai massage. And though she was doing like bookkeeping at the time. And so we both had been yoga instructors and held that kind of space for people. So eventually I evolved it into just a wellness retreat company and not specific training for body work. But we took some trip. We took one trip together as business partners to Thailand.
Wow. Okay. So I love that you were like, we have so much alignment. Of course, this is great. I'm just curious. This is my money question that I've learned over time with joint ventures or business partnerships, is to ask more about like, so how do you handle money, or how good are you at sales, or like whatever. Were any of those questions ever discussed between the two of you?
Not one. No.
Not one. I love you so much for being honest. You're like, we didn't think.
And I could tell almost immediately, like we had decided we went in 50-50 in terms of the financials of purchasing this business. And then I could tell within the first couple of months, we were, we decided to take out an additional little loan to kind of fund things for a little while. And she wanted to use some of that money to buy a vacuum for our house.
Okay.
And write it off as a business expense. And I was like, that doesn't really count. So red flag number 2. I skipped over the first one, but we can talk about that later.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. What were the goals of the partnership? Because I mean, outside of the vacuum cleaner, it sounds a little not perfect, but not terrible.
Right. The goals of the business partnership. I mean, I have always wanted to travel and work and be able to earn money from anywhere in the world. That's always been a life goal of mine. When I started teaching bodywork in probably 2010, it was like, okay, yeah, I want to travel and teach and hold intensive kind of workshops. And this opportunity fell in my lap. And I was like, yes, the universe is just handing this to me. Like, yes, so that was the goal for me, was to have a full-time travel business and kind of bounce it, maybe do 6 trips a year of a couple 10 days in length to a couple weeks, and then have a home base to come back to in Boulder, Colorado.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was that also her goal as far as you knew? Like she really wanted to have a travel business or?
No, I don't think so. I
Okay.
don't think so. We never explicitly talked about it. And I think that was one of the big missed opportunities that it led to the eventual dissolution of the partnership. But I'm not sure really what her goals were. I think she wanted to feel a part of something.
Okay. So I'm glad you're highlighting this because this happens many times in partnerships. There's one that I would say is like the shining star, the real magnetic personality. They may be good with sort of the back end, like let's look over the numbers, let's do this. But
Yeah.
they really are sort of the generator, the visionary of the concept. And how they often work best is having somebody behind them, not necessarily like an accountant, but somebody who's like, well, I'll do the sales piece, or I'm going to run the numbers, or let's see what we can do, or let me check my contacts. They're very much sort of what I'd say like the bread and butter of the business sort of
Mhm.
aspect. So they can kind of stand behind somebody and let them, if you will, be the face. And then they don't have to think about themselves too much. You know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
just that kind of thing in a partnership. But it can also get risky if you have somebody who's like, I joined this concept or this partnership because I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing in life. And I just like enthusiasm.
Yeah. I feel like it was the latter for her.
Okay.
And although in terms of personality, she was super charismatic, like very engaging and knew how to entertain people and win people over. So she definitely had, won me over in our friendship.
Yeah, yeah. And it sounded like it all kind of happened at once. Like, it's like you guys met at a dinner party, like through, good friends, introductions. You guys were living together. So you kind of had a
Yes.
flavor of this person. But like any roommate story is eventually, it's like you wake up and you realize, oh my God, you're grumpy every morning.
She was, yeah. No,
Yeah.
and it was just too much. We were too enmeshed, to be
Mm.
best friends and living together and business partners. Like it might have been different had we not had all three of those things going on for us at the same time.
Yeah. So knowing what you know now, because you already mentioned a couple red flags, what could you have done differently?
Well, the first red flag that I alluded to earlier that I skipped over was that when she first asked me if I was telling her about this business opportunity, she asked me if I wanted a business partner. The immediate answer within my body was no. And I didn't want to say that. I didn't want to hurt her feelings in that moment. So I was like, let me think about it. And then I sort of talked myself into it. I was like,
Ah,
"Ooh, it'd be cool to like have someone else to do this with. And we have a really good time together. And it would be cool to have, someone else just to lift me up if I'm not feeling motivated and vice versa. Um, so that was the first red flag. I could have listened to my intuition, essentially.
okay. So number one, could have listened to your
Yeah.
intuition. Yeah.
Could have could have had more defined job descriptions right out the gate of what she was going to be responsible for and what I was going to be responsible for, as well as sort of not consequences, but like what happens if you don't follow through with what you say you're going to do, because that ended up happening a lot. Is we would sort of sit down for our meetings, like our work meetings, and we do a division of labor at that time instead of kind of overall. It's like, here's what we need to do. I'll do this, you do this. And then she would use our like work time as personal therapy sessions and not get stuff done, not deliver what she said she was going to do in the time that she said she was going to do it. And so it was like, as partners, I'm not her boss. I can't like punish her or something, but there was just no accountability. There was no sort of like, here's what's going to happen if, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that sounds like definitely like a missing conversation. It sounds like eventually this started to dissolve. Can you share a little bit, like pull the curtain back again? You're just talking about your side of the street. We're not here to blame her or shame her. I don't even know who this woman is, but we're just here to talk about you.
So, yeah, it really became apparent that this wasn't working during the Thailand trip. So this was an actual like 5-week experience that we had gotten people to sign up for. We did not get enough people to sign up for it to run the trip at a profit, but we decided to go for it anyway.
Okay.
Just as like, launching the ship. It's just, you expect to take a loss on maybe the first experience or two.
Mhm.
And So because we weren't making money on the trip, we decided we couldn't, both go for the entire time and have that other person, like have an extra body to pay for. So we split the responsibilities. She took the first 2 weeks in northern Thailand, and then I took the latter 2.5, 3 weeks in southern Thailand. And she was calling me at like 2 a.m. Mountain Time,
Wow.
I mean, the time difference, like in crisis fairly often. There was one woman on the trip who was very challenging. It was kind of using it to get sober from an addiction to opiates. And so that was its own thing. So anyway, that part went off. Like, she handled some stuff. I helped her over the phone. It seemed fine. When I met the group in southern Thailand, I got an entirely different story about her behavior and how she had held space for the group. And so I was very disillusioned at that point, but I went forward with my part of the trip. Also super challenging. For many, many reasons. But it was a mutual decision. Essentially, I got back and she gave me a couple of days to get over jet lag, and then she was like, "I don't think I want to be a part of this anymore." And I was like, "Great, I'm on the same page."
So you guys were still best friends and living together. So what happened with that?
What did happen with that?
I know. Doesn't it seem like 2017 is a lifetime ago?
Yeah.
It's only 9 years ago, but it's like,
Right.
Who was I then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it didn't last much longer. I can say that. The relationship, the living together, and I can't remember if it was the following summer. I don't remember the timeline or anything, but essentially everything sort of split pretty quickly after that. I went to Kenya to scout another destination for another trip and came back, and I ended up moving out on my birthday. We were in July, and then within a couple months we were kind of working on the paperwork, but she was dragging it was one of those things where she wasn't doing her side of getting the paperwork done to actually sell the business. And anyway, I think it was within a couple of months that there was no more living together, and the friendship suffered because of that whole experience.
Yeah. Looking back now, have you forgiven her or yourself? Has that been a sticking point? Because this is one thing I know about money, is that people will repeat a conversation that they may have had or did not have over and over and over in their head for years and sometimes decades. Like, they're still fighting with their parents, their ex, their brothers and sisters. And you're like, but wait, that didn't actually happen. And they're like, oh, I guess that is kind of crazy. And it's like, have you forgiven them? And then reminded yourself you have. So I'm just curious for yourself.
It's a good question. I've done a lot of work around that relationship, and I don't feel a charge when I, like, in my body or in my being when I talk about it anymore. And so in that way, I think I have healed, essentially. Forgiven her. I certainly don't wish her any ill will. I ran into her like a year ago in downtown Boulder, and we sat down. My best friend was there, and who was the woman who introduced us, actually.
Wow.
And the three of us sat down and we ran into each other at like a tea shop. And so we had tea together, and it was she's super intelligent, really witty and funny. And she's still that person,
Yeah.
But I was tempted to kind of like reopen the relationship after that. And my husband had to sort of remind me how traumatic that relationship had been for me. And he urged me not to reopen that door.
Well, good for your husband for, reminding you of the thing that we often are told, just forgive and restart. And it's like, you can forgive, you just don't have to forget.
Right. Exactly. And it's interesting, the money question, because as we were working out me buying her out, her half of the business, we had taken a loss, of course, on that first trip. And so in my mind, I'm no accountant, but in my mind now the business is worth less, right? Because we have different numbers on the books. And she, being an accountant, insisted that no, that was not the case. And I needed to buy her out for the full amount that she had paid upon the purchase of the business, like only a year before. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And it just turned into this impasse. And I was like, fine, I'm just going to pay. Like, I don't want this to turn into an argument. I don't want to drag this out any longer. So I paid her more than what her half of the business was worth on the books. And in my mind, I've been like, Oh yeah. Well, if she just like pays me that lump sum, then all will be forgiven, right? If she
Right.
comes back like a decade later and just gives me that lump sum, then we'll be cool. I don't
Wow.
think it's gonna happen, but
Yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
that's an interesting piece. It's like you looked at the numbers, you did this, and then you made I would say, a generous decision instead of taking a litigious decision. And
Right.
neither is right or wrong because I'm not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer. There's no lawyers here. So we don't
Yeah.
have to worry about that stuff. But I get it with, when things are starting to dissipate, you trying to prove your case of like, no, 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 or let me, fine, I'll call my accountant and see what they have to say.
Right.
Instead of having that discussion or argument, you were like, you know what? Just let her go.
Yeah.
And that might have been better for your sanity, but there's a part of you like, but it'd be nice if
Yeah.
the universe granted me some extra cash from this.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so how do you approach business partnerships now?
Well, I haven't had one since then.
You're still looking for your check. Okay.
No, I haven't had one since then. I would, so theoretically, I would approach them very differently. I would have kind of all the things that we talked about in terms of really distinct job descriptions, who's responsible for what, sort of an accountability kind of escalation ladder. If you don't deliver, then here's what happens. And I think that I would also want to retain majority ownership so that it wasn't
a 50-50 thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say what makes a good legal contract too is that if the entire thing just is a bust, meaning it's a loss, that if you choose to buy their half out or they choose to leave, you can only give them after the loss. And then I find that is some smart thinking because that is something that lawyers would encourage. And granted, what state, there's always more to the conversation, but I've seen that happen. They just go, hey, if we didn't make any money, then the only thing that'll be left is after the losses and after taxes are paid. And then people are like, oh, and it's like, yeah, you thought you could just shirk your responsibilities and hand it off on somebody else who's married with a husband. And it's like,
right. With no consequence and just, and no risk. Right.
Right. Right. And I love that. Maybe that's part of the missing ingredient is, how risky, is this person willing to go in the next business venture? And for you, it sounds like, not much. Or it might be more of a short-term thing. Like I would only do it for one specific retreat and then I would reevaluate at the next one because every country's different. Like that's really smart too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us more about who you are, Jessica, and how people can reach you.
Yeah. So these days, I no longer run wellness retreats. I'm still
so smart.
Yeah, I'm still in the health and wellness field. COVID ended up doing me in. I did, maintain for a few years, 4 years, I think, after the dissolution of that partnership. But COVID really pulled the rug out from under me, and I just wasn't able to recover from that. Still in the health and wellness industry, as I have been for my entire career. So these days, I'm a functional health coach, specifically for female founders and entrepreneurs, to help them make business easier by maximizing their energy, mental focus, and clarity through functional lab testing and a personalized health plan.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like even though I know this has been a trend that people go to AI for their medical advice. And so far it's not been good from what I've heard. Like, I just like, so how did it work? Do they recommend more vitamins? That's nice. But if you need more vitamin B12 and you just took a bunch of C, I'm not a doctor either. I don't know what that's going to mean. But if you need this and you're giving it that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So this approach is all about like the body as a system too. As a founder, entrepreneur, you optimize every other system in your business. So let's use the body and leverage your health as a business asset.
I love that concept because right there that incorporates the risk piece. We cannot put our bodies through more work than it can tolerate. Like one of the things I'll say is that we're incredibly resilient, but our bodies are very fragile. And if we don't treat them with the utmost care or think about like, if I don't take the time to take care of me, then it's just, you're just biding time until an absolute medical disaster is going to, and it probably won't just happen to you. It'll be you and 3 other family members. And so then you're
Right.
really, up the creek trying to find a paddle. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. And my whole message I'm trying to get across to people is you don't have to sacrifice your health for the
yeah.
success of your business.
I love that.
Yeah, they can go hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so, so, so important. Okay. I'm so glad you shared that.
Yeah.
Jessica, thank you so much for being an amazing guest and sharing your information. Her information will be in the chat, guys, so no worries. And I just want to say thank you again, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks, Jeannie.
Bye-bye.